Chrissie, welcome. I think everybody's probably knows you, I think, because you've been coming quite regularly, haven't you, with the Wigglies?
Faye knows me.
Faye knows you. I don't watch Faye's trouble. And so you very kindly offered to come and share your testimony with us all this morning. It's going to be something new for me. I don't know anything about your testimony, so I'm really looking forward to hearing about it. I've got a few questions, but I think we'll just go and see where it leads, shall we? Yeah? So I'll start with the first question is, can you introduce yourself and tell us briefly about how you came to know Jesus?
Okay. So I was born in Liverpool, moved to Wrexham when I was 7. And then I moved to Llandudno 7 years ago, so I'm living in Llandudno now. The move to Llandudno was the Lord's plan. I run the Haven Cafe, which is a Christian cafe, and the Lord blesses me and the cafe every single day. And I'll just echo what Jane said about David's work, because David visits Llandudno with his work with Sanctuary Trust probably twice a month, maybe 3 times a month, and he always makes time to come to the cafe, and he is such an encouragement, and he prays with me, and you are so blessed to have him. You really are. He is such an encouragement, and he really does work hard for the Lord, and I'm glad that the Lord's introduced him into my life. So yeah, great encouragement. So look after David.
Can you tell a little bit about how you came to know Jesus, a bit of a testimony?
Do you want the long version? Are you all sitting comfortable?
We'll be bringing popcorn, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, so I became a Christian, what year are we in now, 2000? So 12 years ago, after the death of my husband. So quite a sad story, but everything that's happened to me has had a reason and a good outcome in the work I now do at Haven. So I'll just say briefly, I was brought up in a family of 9 children in Liverpool. I'm pretty sure my mum was a Christian, but she's not around to ask. I'm not sure about my dad. So I went to church till I was about 14 years old, roughly around then, Sunday school. And then off I went into the world, as some teenagers do. I went to church now and again, usually when something awful was happening, and prayed and cried and got angry with God, but I wasn't a church goer. I always said I believed in God, always put myself down as a Christian on forms, but I didn't know God. So I got married at 18, I had my first daughter at 21, perfect healthy pregnancy. My mum was dying of cancer at the time when my daughter was born. Perfect pregnancy, no problems. But 3 days into her life, she was rushed off to Alderhay Hospital. Very stressful time. She nearly died. On 3 occasions, she had to have 5 operations. Really bad time because my mum was here dying and I had to be in Alderhay looking after my newborn baby. So horrible time, but she survived. At the time, my older sister had just recently converted to be a Catholic, and she was pretty in my face with it, really, and it didn't do anything to help me on my walk with the Lord. When my daughter was dying in Alderhay, she wanted to get the priest, and I won't tell you what I told her to do with her rosemary beads. But it didn't help me anyway. So my daughter survived, and then I had my second daughter, and then sadly my mum died. So a very stressful time. I was young, and my marriage ended after 7 years. Still amicable to this day. My husband still lives in Wrexham. So I then lived very much in the world. Brought up my girls, no problem, all good. My daughter went off to university. She became a Christian. Wow, I saw such a change in her. Didn't think it had an effect on my life, but it did. And then my friend Sue died. She was only 50 years old. Her husband Mick, we grieved together. Then I worked with him, and then we fell in love. And I moved in and lived in sin, I now call it, with Mick for 8 years. He then convinced me to marry him, and I didn't really have the opportunity to say no, because he proposed to me in a room full of 200 people while on holiday. So I was cornered. Anyway, we had a beautiful marriage, and I had a beautiful life. I worked from home. My work-life balance was amazing. I wanted to nothing. I thought life was pretty perfect. 4 months into that marriage, Mick started with a pain in his neck. Not just me, a real pain in his neck. And he just got worse and worse. He carried on working, but in the evening he was fit for nothing. So I said, come on, we'll go on holiday. We'll have a holiday. You need a rest. While on holiday, Mick just got worse and worse, and all these little lumps started to appear on his chest. And he wasn't a wimp. He was an ex-army guy. He was a tough guy. Anyway, we couldn't wait to leave Turkey and get back so that we could see the GP. And we arranged for a private scan to find out what was going on. Anyway, he didn't get as far as the private scan because that night I had to call an ambulance. So 6 days in hospital, lots of tests, and then that dreaded word, he had cancer. And he was 54 years old. It was so far gone, the doctor just said, go home and be together. And he died in my arms 3 weeks later. And we'd only been married 9 months. Now, talk about bring yourself to your end of yourself. That was the end of my world as I knew it. And Mick was from Northern Ireland, and he'd lost 2 of his brothers during the troubles of the IRA. So Christianity and religion was not something we ever talked about. On the day he died at home, and lots of comings and goings were going on. And one of his friends, he used to have his Friday night out with the lad, but one of his friends was the local vicar, strangely enough, Matthew Burns. Did any of you know Matthew Burns, local? No. Anyway. So the day before Mick died, he'd asked Matthew to come to the house. He was the only person that saw Mick in those last few weeks other than me. So I didn't think much of it at the time, and Matthew only lived round the corner, so on the morning that Mick died, beautiful sunny day like today actually, Matthew was the first person to come to the house. And I was, you can imagine if you lose your husband, I don't know what was going on, but I remember Matthew being there, and I remember he took my younger daughter who'd come, and he just sat with her, and he had this nice peace about him. Anyway, while we were waiting for the undertakers to come, we sat in the garden, beautiful sunny day, lots of family and friends around. And a slate fell off the roof of the house. And I was sobbing my heart out at this point, but this slate fell off the roof and hit Mick's car, which was on the drive. And I just stopped crying and burst out laughing and said, that's just Mick. He's letting me know he's gone to heaven, not hell. He's throwing slates. How naive was I then? I was so naive. I really thought that was true. But I do hope to meet him in heaven one day, worshipping our Lord. And my hope comes from the fact he called the priest the day before, and that God is gracious, and the thief on the cross. In his final moments, the Lord said there'll be a place in heaven. So, that was hard, wondering when I did become a Christian, will Mick be there or not? But, it's not a big part of my life. So anyway, I don't know why and I don't know how, but I walked around to the church. Mick died on a Saturday. The next day I went to church. No idea why. Cried my eyes out. Never spoke to anyone except Matthew and went home. And I thought, okay, that's where Mick's funeral's going to be, so at least I've been there. Anyway, funeral happened. Quite a long wait because of autopsies and whatever. Went to the funeral. Mick was well-loved, well-attended funeral. And then people sort of drift away then, the comfort goes. But for some reason, the Lord dragged me to that church every single Sunday in those early months. And at first, I just used to cry, go home, cry, go home. But eventually, I started to pay a bit more attention to the sermon, and the people in the church mothered round me and realised I was a young widow. And then the Lord obviously put the right people around me at the right time. And there was one particular lady called Stacey, who was a Sunday school teacher. And she, she did really come alongside me, and I had lots and lots of questions of why. I just thought I must have been a really bad person, and that's why. He'd taken away my husband, my friend, my boss, everything, my life, really. So when Mick died, my daughter, who lived on the Isle of Wight, the one that had become a Christian, she came home from the Isle of Wight and she said, Mum, I don't know what to say to you today, because this is the day after Micah died. But she said, the answer's in here. And this is the Bible she gave me the day after my husband died. Obviously, at the time, I wasn't interested in it, but I carry it around with me everywhere now. So, yeah, she said, I don't know what to say, but the answer's in there. You know, amazing witness, and for her, really, to do that to her mother, because Mick wasn't her father. So, going back to the church, I settled in church. I asked them to do, like, an adult Sunday school. I said, I've got so many questions, I don't understand this, because I've got what I call a simple faith. I'm not a theologian. I couldn't quote many Bible verses, but I've got him in here. So we had this course, and it made sense. But then the dark winter came, and I had to have operation on both my eyes. I'm partially sighted, so I don't drive, and part of this is the operation. So it was December the 30th, my first Christmas on my own, dark nights, really bleh. And this friend, Lacey, said, start praying to God. And, you know, just pray for things. You know, tell him how you're feeling, pray. So because Mick had died, I'd lost my husband and my job. So eventually I had to have a job. And I don't even remember filling in the application form, but there was a job going in Chester University. On the morning of the interview, I walked my dogs in the field behind the house, got back to the house, couldn't find my keys. Now, in those early months of grief, that sort of thing just tipped me over the edge. I was so angry that I couldn't find my keys, and the field I walked on was the size of 3 football pitches. And I thought, I'm never going to find them. And I looked and looked for 20 minutes. And then this little voice in my head said, pray. Stacey told you to pray. So it was a very half-hearted prayer. I said, yeah, okay, Lord, here's your chance. Here's your chance to prove to me you exist and that this is not a load of rubbish. And I prayed. Find the keys, because I need to get to this interview. Now, I'd looked on the field for about 20 minutes, and I'd searched my pockets. I said that prayer, I looked down, and there were the keys. I picked the keys and I thought, just a coincidence, a load of rubbish. Ran to the house, caught my bus to Chester. So on the way to Chester, I thought, OK, I'm going to play this game again. Right, Lord, you know, I need a job, and this is a good job, I need a job. So if you're really there, get me this job. So had the interview, disastrous interview. There was a panel of 4 people. One of the questions was, on the application form, which I don't remember filling in, you've said we can't contact your ex-employer. Well, my ex-employer was my husband, so obviously they couldn't contact him. So that was one of the questions, why can't we contact your ex-employer? So I said, because he's dead. Well, they all burst into tears. 2 men and 2 women. It was awful. I thought, oh, that's it. No way am I going to get this job. Anyway, went home. Next day, got a phone call. They offered me this job. I thought, 2 out of 2 prayers. Coincidence? Nah, still don't believe you. Anyway, the 3rd prayer was I needed to sell Mick's car because it was no use to me. I wasn't allowed to drive anymore. And the car sold pretty much straight away. And my biggest regret is that I didn't write a journal in those early days, because I am sure there was hundreds of answered prayers. And I remember walking with my friend Stacey. I said, you know this prayer business? I said, what happens when people pray for someone to get better and they don't get better, they die? And she's told me about this thing called God's will, which is, even today, I struggle with God's will, but I do understand now that, you know, God answers prayer. It's either yes, no, or not yet, or I've got something better. He does answer prayer. Might not answer it to what we want, but he does always answer it. So that was in my mind. Anyway, the winter came, I had these operations, feeling very sorry for myself. And I used to have this log down in the National Trust Park where I walked. You know Erddig Park? That wasn't far from my house, so I used to walk there with my 2 dogs. And on this one day, I couldn't cope anymore. The grief had overtaken me. Everything was... I was in a crossroads. My old friends had sort of drifted away. I'd made friends with the church friends, but my life was a mess. So I literally, and it was a wet, muddy day because I was covered in mud by the time I got up off my knees. But the Lord really did bring me down to my knees. I begged him to accept me. I begged him to forgive me. I promised to live my life his way. Just accept me. And, you know, there was a lot of tears and a lot of mud. But I stood up and I felt my old life empty, just disappear from me. It was my closest description is when you pull a plug out of a sink and all that dirty water goes down the drain. That's how I felt. It was the most amazing feeling, and it never leaves me. I'll never forget that feeling. And I walked home with a skip in my step and my head held high, something I'd not been able to do for months. And I went home and I thought, yes, right, that's it. I'll phone the vicar. I'll tell him what's just happened. So I phoned Matthew and he said, okay, calm down, that's wonderful, but it won't be easy. He said, it's not just, that's it. He said, you know, it's a journey. And then we discussed getting baptised when I was ready and being born again. And I was baptised nearly 12 months after Mick had died. And my life has never been the same since. There's a lot more. So that was how I became a Christian. The Lord physically brought me to the end of myself. And like my sister, when she first became a Catholic, I wanted to run down the street saying, come on, everybody, wake up, why don't you understand? Jesus loves you. And thankfully, I was surrounded by sensible, humble, experienced Christians who kept me down there. But I still do have that. I still am like a bottle of pop sometimes, and I do want to, but I have to remember, calm down. So life was going good. I had a church, but living in the house that Mick had died in was proving a bit difficult. It was, you know, every time I went home, all I could remember was Mick dying on the bed downstairs. So I eventually moved across town to Boris, and it was opposite Boris Park Church by Acton Park there. So I changed church and started going there. Still have many friends in the first church in Poynter Street I went to, and I'll never forget how they mothered around me. But I started going to Boris Church, and I grew as a Christian, really grew as a Christian. They were a lovely, lovely community, like you, actually. You know, you feel the love when you walk in there. And I was a breath of fresh air to them because I was a newly converted, on fire for the Lord Christian. So it all worked out well. But then I took my eyes off the Lord. No, hang on, no. One night I had a vision, because when I was grieving, I spent a lot of time sitting in cafes just to get out of the house and be with people, but not wanting to speak to them. And I spent a lot of time in cafes. And one night I had a vision that there needed to be a cafe where people could go and just be, without the pressure of buying a coffee or buying another sandwich or whatever. There needed to be a place where people could go and sit. And that was the vision. And I started looking. And I was that close to signing on a property in Rossett. But the Lord said, not yet, not now, not here, not yet. And the reason he stopped me, or the way he stopped me in my tracks, was boom number 2, really. I didn't see this coming, but I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And as you ladies know, ovarian cancer is a silent killer. So by the time they found it, I had one ovary with a tumour the size of an orange. The other ovary had a tumour the size of an apple. Lots of other tumours. It wasn't looking good. It wasn't looking good at all. But the church prayed for me. The other church prayed for me. Every church in Wrexham was praying for me. Even people that didn't believe were praying for me. And as you know, because I'm sitting here, the cancer didn't take me. I survived. Horrible time, but it was an opportunity to show to my younger daughter, who's not a Christian, that I was at peace. I thought, I'm in a win-win situation. I'm either going to survive or I'm going home. And because I remember her saying, Mum, you're so calm. I said, it's okay. I was sad. I didn't want to leave my family behind, and I still had so much to do. But the Lord saved me, and here I am. So then after that, that church showed me so much love around that time. Really was God in action. If ever there was a film to be made of what God wants us to treat our fellow family, Boris Church did it for me during that horrible time. But then I took my eyes off the Lord, and a man entered my life. He preached in the church. He was known by a lot of people. Anyway, a lot of what I know about that time is in hindsight now, but long story short, this man, wherever I was, this man appeared. And eventually, we got together. But I'd already had this vision, and I was going to carry out this vision for the Lord. And that vision took me to the cafe which I opened in Llandudno. It wasn't an easy thing. It was a labour of love. It needed renovating from top to bottom. I know some of you have been there. And then So I moved to Llandudno October 17. This man, I'm not saying his name in case any of you know him, we call him Bob. He moved to Llandudno in December 2017 and said he was going to help me run the business and blah, blah, blah. And we got married in February 2018. The night before I married him, I asked the Lord, if this isn't of you, Lord, do something to stop this wedding. And nothing happened, so I married him. And I just put the doubt down to pre-wedding nerves. Anyway, 7 days into our honeymoon, I realised I'd made a big mistake and something was seriously wrong. And without going into the gory details, 6 months into the marriage, after mental abuse, physical abuse, nearly financial ruin, I realised this marriage wasn't going to work. So I went to the solicitor and I said, I don't want to file for divorce because I'm a Christian and I need to stay married. The solicitor thought I was cuckoo, and in hindsight I was. So we had marriage guidance counsel, and I did try and make it work, but it wasn't going to work, and it was a horrible, horrible time of my life. And my ex-husband was a gambler, which I didn't know about. So to get divorced, I had to raise a lot of money. And I didn't have a lot of money. And I said, okay, Lord, if you want Haven to stay open, because the cafe's there and I live above in the flat, if you want Haven to stay up, you're going to have to find me some money from somewhere to get this man out of this flat, because he wasn't going. And I prayed that prayer, and the next day, a lady who I'd only known 12 months since I'd moved to Llandudno came in. She said, I know you're going through a horrible divorce. I know you need some money. I've got £50,000. So I thought, wow. Apart from bursting into tears, I thought, wow, that's not a coincidence. That's definitely God. So she said, I don't want any interest. When you need it, just let me know. So that was my motivation to keep going with the cafe. I thought, I never doubted in here that Haven was of the Lord, but that was like, all right, that's definitely an answer to prayer. But it wasn't enough money to get my husband out. So a few months later, my eldest brother, who'd always been a Christian, out of the blue said, how much do you need to get him out? So he came up with another large sum of money. So I was nearly there. One day in the cafe, a couple who'd been coming to the cafe from day one, and my first conversation with this couple was how they didn't like the church, they'd been upset by the church, and they didn't believe in God, so don't go talking to me about Jesus. That was their first conversation. It was probably the first week I opened. But they always came to the cafe. The Lord kept bringing them to the cafe. So this one day, they said, oh, you don't seem your normal, happy self today. You okay? And I didn't give them all the gory details, but I did say to them I needed £10,000 to keep the cafe going, to get my husband out. The next day, they gave me an envelope with a cheque in for £10,000. I now had all the money to keep Haven going and get my husband out. It still took 3 years to get him out. But my motivation, because, when you've got all that going on upstairs and you're trying to be a face for God downstairs, it was a horrible time. And then COVID happened, which gave me sort of 10 weeks of, So, God definitely wanted me where he put me. And the lesson I learned, that there was never a man in that vision. I took my eyes off God, and I'll never do that again. And it has, it's damaged me in the point that I don't trust people anymore. Big barrier. And, I've met many a nice men since, but, I said, no, I'm living for the Lord now. I'm not interested. Go away. That's that. But all that horrible stuff, the death of my husband, the death of my mum early. My mum was only 61 when she died. My daughter being ill, my own cancer, losing my eyesight, all those things, I have been able to talk to people in the cafe. So all that bad stuff has been used for good, because I can empathise. I don't know whether you've ever lost anyone close, but you can be nice and you give them sympathy, but until you've been through it yourself, you really do not understand what they have gone through. So, the Lord has, all that rubbish that went on has been used, and I give him all the glory, because it's such a privilege to be able to talk to people. And it's not a Bible-bashing cafe. We don't say, oh, you need a Bible, read that. I befriend people. they open up, they talk to us, and then we can introduce the Lord, and that's how it works. It's not a charity. I have to work very hard to keep it going. And again, the Lord keeps providing financially. So in the cafe, we run a cafe church once a month, which David sometimes comes to, and he's a great blessing to us. The people that come to that cafe church, some go to church, but mostly they're people I've befriended in the cafe that have never set foot in a church. It's actually too big now. We need a bigger cafe. It's quite strange. We need a bigger cafe, which is wonderful. And John Wigley has also now, he blames me for it because he said, I only opened that cafe because of you. So he's got a different type of cafe over in Colwyn Bay, and it's bigger in the sense that we could turn half of it into a church every Sunday. The hurdle is, and something for you to pray about, is how we get the people that come to Haven Cafe Church comfortable enough, because it's their haven. It is their haven. They call it their haven. We want them to be able to see that church is not the building, it's the people. And that we all moved to John's Cafe, we'd have more chairs and more space. So that's a prayer, because it's wonderful that it's sort of grown too big for the cafe, really. So we do the cafe church. I've run alpha courses in the cafe because it's a lovely, safe environment. To befriend people and introduce the Lord, you need that safe environment. They need to know that that you're their friend. The other thing that Haven does, when I open that door every morning, it gives me a hug, and I think, yes, the Lord still wants me here today. And I will know the day that the Lord says enough's enough, no more. I will know, because that place, I give him all the glory. He gives me the strength to continue. I don't recommend you open a cafe. It's flipping hard work. But the joy and the pleasure on people's faces when I've helped someone. I mean, I've just had my 60th birthday. You're supposed to say I don't look it, but never mind. I've just had my 60th birthday, and because of the cancer and because I'd made it to 60, I thought, I'm going to have a party. There was 140 people at my party. It was amazing. David and Sarah were able to come. It was, and I just looked around the room and I thought, how do I know all these people? I've only been here 7 years, but there were some from Wrexham. My family's quite big, but there were so many people that had come through the cafe. And I just looked around the room and everyone was so happy, so happy. And the other thing about that party was there was Christians and non-Christians, and the comments I've had from the non-Christians about how happy the Christians were, I thought, yes, because I think they think we're all a bit weird. Yeah. So it was a good thing, but I had 120 birthday cards, and not one of them just said, happy birthday, Chrissie. They all said something personal about how I touched their life. Well, I don't say it's me, I say it's the Lord through me, but it's been a great motivation to keep going. And I said to them, I don't want any presents. I want you to donate. There's one of my customers' daughter's got cancer, and she's lost her breast, and she's lost all her hair, and she wanted a wig, a nice wig. So I said, that's what we'll do for my birthday. We won't have presents, we'll raise money for the wig. It took me nearly 2 days to open all my presents, because obviously people don't listen. But we still managed to raise £1,500 for the wig as well. So, wonderful. I'm really blessed with who the Lord's put around me. But yeah, I can't quote the Bible, but there is something I sort of read every day. It's sort of like the meaning of one of the verses in the Bible, John 8, where it says, the darkness may come, but it will never overcome me. And, that's gives me motivation. I'm sure there'll be more problems ahead, but I know that the Lord walks with me through them all. And that hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness, was my hymn when I had the cancer and we were praying every meeting for prayer every week. That was the hymn we sang. And the Lord really did come. I've never felt alone. Since the day I accepted the Lord, I have never felt alone. He's in here. He's in here. One day I hope to have time to learn and study the Bible, but that's not the important bit. It's knowing that the Lord is with you and that he's your strength. And I give him all the glory.
Wow, thank you so much, Chrissie. Everything that through my head, as you were talking, all I could hear was He redeems, he redeems, he redeems. He takes everything that we go through and he makes it into something beautiful, and he can use it for his kingdom. Nothing is wasted in God's kingdom at all, is it? Thank you so much for sharing your testimony with us this morning. I just wondered if somebody would be willing to pray for Chrissie and for the work that's happening in the cafe. I'm sure you've said in ways that we can support, and I guess over a cup of tea and coffee we can chat some more. But if there's somebody that we're willing just to pray for Chrissie and for the work that she's doing in Haven. Thank you.
Thank you, Chrissie, for sharing us your warts and all.
Yeah.
Thank you that you've helped us to understand life isn't easy as a Christian, but it is doable and there is great joy in it. And when we know that God is behind us and before us and underneath us when we fall, we are so grateful. And you have shown us this. And we ask very much for